Hi, it's Brother Charles of Reviewers Revival, and up on the Reviewers Bench at this time we're taking a look at the formidable Poly KB2 by XILS-Lab. The Poly KB2 is a faithful, high-quality emulation of a vintage, early 80s RSF polycobal analog synthesizer. XILS-Lab have spared absolutely no effort in creating one of the finest virtual analog soft synths available in the current marketplace. If you're a lover of Diva, Rob Papin's Predator, and other synths of such renown, you are going to love what the Poly KB2 has to offer. Stick and stay, don't hit that back button. You're going to enjoy this one. Yes, the lush, powerful sounds of XILS-Lab's Poly KB2. Man, this thing has got so much analog warmth dripping off of it, you get soaking wet just standing in front of your computer while it's up on the screen. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a look at this thing from start to finish, left to right, top to bottom, inside, outside, and we'll try to do it quickly today, so stay with me, fasten your seatbelt, settle in with a good cup of joe and a good snack, because we're going to fast track the Poly KB2. We'll cycle through many of the included presets. We'll take a listen to Unison. We will also investigate the built-in 128-step sequencer. We are going to take a careful look at the modulations, assignments, destinations, LFOs 1 and 2, VCOs, VCFs, attack, delay, sustain, release 1 and 2, as well as the effects, and of course the polyphony and stereo capabilities of this powerful synthesizer. Oh boy, the powerful, princely Poly KB2 virtual analog synthesizer. Where to start? Well, I guess the best place to start would be at the beginning. On the original hardware, the MIDI sync button was there so that you could sync the synthesizer to external MIDI devices, whether that be for the purposes of transposing or controlling oscillators in either direction. On the soft synth, however, the MIDI sync button is simply a really cool way of just making sure that the soft synth is tempo synced to your host or DAW, in particular the arpeggiator and also the sequencer. Enabling the pitch button forces global tuning. And by the way, if you hold down the Alt key while you're adjusting a tune or pitch button, the synth will adjust its pitch by perfect semitone increments. And then coming down to the glide switch, this enables obviously the glide functionality, and directly adjacent to it is the glide knob, which allows the user to select the amount of time in milliseconds that the keyboard's glissando function will operate by. While it may not be considered really powerful by today's standards, for its time, 1982 into 1983, the arpeggiator that was built into the polycobal synthesizer was actually a very powerful and capable arpeggiator. The arpeggiator can operate in a polyphonic mode, which in essence causes it to alternate between root note, the 5th, and the 8th, for example. That's a really simple, easy way to be able to add arpeggiation without worrying about whatever chord you're playing against, whether it be a 7th, a 9th, an 11th. It doesn't matter. It will fit. You can also use the arpeggiator in downward motion, upward, or to span octaves. If none of these are selected, the arpeggiator works randomly. We don't hear a difference because I haven't anything playing but one note. So let's play a chord here, a good old C chord. And as you can hear, it's playing randomly. Now it's playing only downwardly. The same holds true for upward arpeggiation. And finally, let's listen to it as it spans octaves. Lots of creative control available and easy to use. It's very easy to come up with some very cool old analog style sounds with this Poly KB2 by XILS-Lab. I've created one for the purposes of this review. I have VCO1 set an octave below standard pitch and VCO2 detuned by 5 millitones. Waveform 1 is 34% from double saw into single saw. Waveform 2 we have set to saw going into standard square wave, 64% in between those two. The volume is set a little bit above 0.5 dB at 0.67. It sounds like this. By the way, I'm using the musical typing keyboard that's built into Mixcraft 6 here. I haven't a USB keyboard or a MIDI keyboard hooked up to the computer right now because the USB slot that I typically use for my Oxygen 49 is being used by my iLok 2 dongle, which I have Poly KB2 authorized through. You'll also notice that I'm using a unison dual voice configuration. I've recorded a very simple 4-step sequencer pattern for this video. And this is just a basic 1-5-8 pattern. Root, 5th, root an octave higher, 5th an octave higher. And it sounds like this. So using my musical keyboard, let's step through a very simple 1, 5, minor 6, 4, back to the 1 configuration, or pattern rather. I will now quickly show you how I created that simple 4-step sequence. The first thing I will do is select a voice. Next, I'll select the step, play, and record buttons, making sure that the sequence position marker is over here in the 4th sequence position, or as I like to think of it, in the 4th quarter note position. I will now play my first note. When I do this, by the way, it will not be recording for this position in the sequencer. When I play a note, it will actually always be recording the next position in the sequence. For instance, although the sequence marker is here in the 4th block, when I depress a note, it will actually be recording the note needed for the 1st block. Watch, I'll show you. There you can see the note was created. My next note will be the 5th, the root an octave higher, and the 5th an octave higher. I'll take off the step button and you'll hear this playing in real time. Now I want to be able to trigger this instead of it playing automatically. So I press the trigger button. But there's something to consider here. If I play a note that has nothing to do with the key signature of C, and let's say that I play this C sharp, or rather F sharp note, it doesn't sound very good unless you're deliberately looking for some sort of dissonant, discordant sound. So to make sure that we always have 1-5-1-5 playing, we'll press the tuned button. Now watch. come over here and click on the musical typing box to enable my keyboard, my virtual keyboard. And that's how simple it is to create a 4-step sequence within Poly KB2. If I wanted to create more than 4-step sequence, using my left mouse button here on the number 4, I would simply click, and as you will see up here in the sequencer step window, I now have 8 slots, or 8 spaces, or 8 eighth notes, as opposed to only 4. We can do this for values up to 128. For the purposes of the video, and just keep it at quarter notes. It's easy breezy beautiful to map any of these MIDI controllable knobs or buttons within Poly KB2. To put this into effect, we simply click on Effects, open MIDI Settings panel, choose the parameter that you would like to MIDI map. So I will choose LFO1 rate. Click the Learning button. I'll adjust one of the knobs on my Oxygen 49 keyboard. And we now have LFO1's rate feature MIDI mapped. You can see that just by adjusting the knob on my MIDI controller, we adjust it here in Poly KB2. Now to put this into effect, we simply click on the Wheel Enable button. The modulation wheel will affect that. So modulation wheel is full. And now I will adjust the rate. You can see the knob moving on the interface, but I'm using my MIDI controller to actually make the adjustments. And this can be done for as many of these MIDI mappable knobs and controls, all MIDI parameters in Poly KB2. The only limitation that you would face is how many MIDI controllable assignments are available to you on your MIDI controller, keyboard, etc.